Theme number 2. All right. Dee says, great job, Mallory. Oh, okay. Theme number 2, folks. Let's see. And Suzanne says it's the best being a redhead. Yes, it is. Well, Suzanne, when you have such gorgeous, beautiful red hair like you do, yeah, that would totally be worth it. All right. Theme number 2. What are we going to talk about today? Oh, and then I have a winner to announce at the end of today. Don't let me forget. For someone who won Christopher Thompson's new bundle of yumminess. So I've got a winner. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is I have 4 tips for you. 4 tips on when it comes to piecing triangles and not getting the points stuck in the feed dogs. Has that ever happened to you? So you're sewing together triangles, okay? This is a half square triangle, for example, but anytime you have a point and you go to sew it, what has happened? What has happened with that? On occasion. Doesn't happen every time, but what is the one thing that can frustrate you to no end when you're trying to feed that through your sewing machine? Any guesses? Da 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 da. Bum 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 bum. Ba da bum bum bum. Nobody's answering. Come on, guys. What could happen? Oh, there we go. Down the hole. There we go, Debbie Sherman. And Debbie Clark Smith also got that correct. Point gets sucked into the feed dogs. Rick and Debbie said the machine gets the munchies. I like that. Barb says gets caught in the feed dogs. It folds on you, pulled into the bobbin. The machine eats it. Oh, you guys, you have this down. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Good job, guys. Good job. So I'm going to talk to you 4 tips I have to help prevent that the next time you are sewing at corners. You don't get it as much with a square. When you're going in perpendicular to each other, you don't see that as much. Sometimes you can, but oftentimes it will happen more so with the corner because you got that tiny point, you're trying to pull it through and boom, down it goes. So what are my tips for you? First of all, when you're putting it in, and I'm going to take you over to the sewing machine too, but I'm going to explain it a little bit up here to the camera, and then I'll bring you down to the sewing machine. Okay, so I've got 2 little triangles here, and I've got them right sides together. The first tip I want to tell you is to not start at the tip. Okay? I know that might seem a little self-explanatory, but maybe this will be like an aha moment for you. Don't start at the tip. Okay? Make sure that you are starting your needle where the 1/4 inch is. So you are on the wider part of that triangle. Okay, so let me show you how that works. Oh, interesting. Lynn says she puts used Kimberbell tape on the end first. Now that could be tip number 5 because I've never heard of that. Get my thing situated here. That's actually a really great idea. Okay. Alrighty. So the first thing, let's bring this around. See if this helps a little bit, maybe. Okay. The first thing I want to do is I don't want to start at the tip. I want to start at the 1/4 inch. And so I'm going to put my needle or my presser foot down. And my needle's starting over here. It's not starting back there. I know it's probably not very easy to tell here, but there we go. Okay. So that's tip number 1. Start at the 1/4 inch, and you're making sure your presser foot is up. This goes all the way back. That tip goes all the way back, and then your needle actually starts right here, not back here. Don't let your needle start back here. Okay, make sure it starts right there at the 1/4 inch. Okay, so that's tip number 1. You ready for tip number 2? Tip number 2, let me put 2 together, is to use what we would call a leader cloth or a starter cloth, or, you know, leaders and enders. Do you know what I'm talking about when I say that? For those of you who may not be familiar with that term, a leader cloth is simply a scrap piece of fabric. I like to fold it in half, and I'm going to start in the middle here and then continue on with a chain piecing. So, for example, I would take my leader cloth. Again, this is just a scrap piece of fabric, and put my foot down, and I'm going to start sewing, but I'm going to sew off of it and move right on to this piece. Okay? So, whoops, hello, throwing my stiletto around. Okay. So here we go. Let me getting some sound effects there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start on the leader cloth. Whoops. And then it just moves right on to the next piece. Okay. So that's tip number 2. And you could also have an ender cloth. A lot of people will do that too. But do you see how it's chain pieced like this? Then I just have to cut this apart at the end. And I can reuse this scrap over and over and over again. I don't know how well that helps or not. I don't know. So I can use this over and over again. Maybe? I don't know. There we go. And I just continue, and I can put it in again and use it again, and put it in again and use it again. Okay? So sometimes it's like giving it a running start, a head start to get onto that triangle piece. Okay? The third tip I have, and I hope that makes sense. I can't see the questions quite yet, but I will take a look and see. Okay? The third tip I have would be to use a straight stitch needle plate. Okay? Now, a straight stitch needle plate, let me see if I can, oh no, I don't want to do that. Let me, oops. Hold on. There we go. I want to pull this out. Okay? Ooh, I'm looking at, my machine needs to be cleaned. Okay, a straight stitch needle plate is one where it has a single hole right there in the middle. Okay, now most plates on the sewing machine will actually, the feed dogs will go through all this whole area, and it will be one big open space. Okay, but notice you have a hole right there in the center, and then you have separate holes on the other sides, and that's because if you wanted to move your needle over, you could with this particular straight stitch needle plate. There are also straight stitch needle plates where you don't have the side holes and you just have the single hole, but on every machine what ends up coming with it is one that is open like this, and that's where sometimes those pieces can get sucked down into the feed dogs, is because this is open. When you have a straight stitch needle plate, there is only one place where that needle goes down into, right there, and it goes straight in there, and your fabric does not get pulled in on the sides. Okay, so a straight stitch needle plate is a definite will definitely help. So check with your machine. Maybe some of you have straight stitch nail plates and don't even realize what they're used for. Okay, so let me pull this. There we go. So a straight stitch needle plate is tip number 3. And then finally, Tip number 4. Let me see. Let me grab. Okay, there we go. I have 2 more pieces. Another thing that you could do if these things aren't working for you, or if you're having lots of trouble with it, another tip you could do is actually to trim your dog ears before you even stitch. I know that may sound a little scary to some, but I'm going to grab these little scissors here, and this is what I mean. I'm just going to do a little clip right there, and I'm going to flip it around to the other side. So I have pre-trimmed my dog ears. So now what I'm left with, let me see if I can show this a little bit better. Okay, now what I'm left with is that those corners have already been clipped, and now I don't have corners that I have to worry about matching or not having them stuck in. Okay, so you could trim the dog ears before. And this would save you a step later on. I mean, we're going to have to trim them either way, right? We're going to have to either trim them before or we're going to trim them after. So if you're having problems with trying to not get those tips to get sucked in with your feed dogs, then maybe try just clipping them beforehand. And now you have a nice perpendicular edge to go into. So let me show you that. Okay. Press her foot down. Okay. And now I begin sewing. I will also tell you, maybe this should be tip number 5, but a stiletto by Annie is awesome because now I can make sure I can grab that fabric and pull it over, straighten it up, and as it's going through my machine, I'm just kind of tapping on it, making sure everything stays together and it's lined up for my next piece that's going to come through. So I love, love, love the by Annie stiletto. I know Barb talks about this one all the time. It's even it's that important that it's even on, it made it on the 3 at 3 t-shirt, right? So then that way when you go to put the next one together, I'm just, you know, putting one on top of the other, and I'm simply pushing that in and letting it do its thing without getting my fingers too close. Okay, all the way to the end. So love, love, love the by Annie stiletto. Okay, so 5 tips for you on not getting stuck, your triangle stuck in the feed dogs. Okay, so let's, as a quick review, let's go over what they were one more time. So step number 1 is to don't start at the corner. Make sure you're starting literally a 1/4 inch away from that corner. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to use a leader cloth. Remember, that's just the little piece of fabric that we're going to, it's a scrap piece of fabric. You're going to fold over and then, you know, start sewing right off of there. You're chain piecing. You're starting here, and then it's like that, zoom, you've got that start to go on to the next piece without worrying about it getting caught, right? Number 3 idea is to use a straight stitch needle plate. Okay, that will help tremendously with not getting those corners sucked in as you're sewing. And then tip number 4 is to clip. If you're having trouble still with getting those to corners to not come in, pre-clip them. Okay, and now you have a nice perfect perpendicular edge to go onto instead of a little teeny bit of fabric. You have more fabric to go onto. So that's number 4. And then I guess if you want to talk about tip number 5, use a by Annie stiletto. They're awesome, and we use them for everything, and it's like having another hand, another finger without getting that finger too close to the needle. Okay, and I love that it has this kind of this like a barbed edge that allows you to just kind of pick it up, navigate that fabric, and you tell it where you want it to go, right? Okay, so there you have it. So 5 tips today for not having the corner get stuck. Now, have you used all of these? Let's see. Brenda says, I do almost all, have not used the tape. So yeah, that's an idea that someone shared earlier, that they have used a little bit of tape sometimes to do that. Let's see. What else do we have? Paula says she's never thought of trimming. So yeah, that's definitely a definite thing that you could definitely try if it's giving you trouble. Alicia had never thought of trimming the dog ears before. Yes, it's kind of like an engineered corner. Now, there are, if you have think about it, if you have an AccuCut or something, they always, the way they cut them is that the dog ears are already trimmed beforehand, right? You could there's special rulers where you can actually cut these things at a different angle that will help you to do it beforehand. But you can also give it a little whirl, and you're just looking at it and you're like, yep, that's a 1/4 inch, that's a 1/4 inch, boom, there we go. All right. This is, let's see, Cindy says that is why I had to purchase what I had to purchase for my machine, because it was eating my fabric. My guess is, Cindy, are you talking about the single stitch needle plate? The solid hole there. If that's what you're referring to, yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. Anne asked, do you use the 1/4 inch foot to make sure you get a 1/4 inch seam? Not necessarily. I actually, on my machine right now, I do have the 1/4 inch on it. I just happen to be sewing with it. However, oftentimes I will use just the regular foot that it comes with. Okay, and I will move my needle over to the 1/4 inch position. Okay, and why would I do that? Well, sometimes I just do it because I like that the entire foot is over all of the feed dogs at once. And so that's why sometimes I would choose that route. Because on my Janome 9450 that I'm using today, I do love the combination of the single stitch needle plate with a 1/4 inch foot. I like that combination. It works really well for me. So, it just kind of depends on what you have and what kind of features your machine can do. But you can do this and not have a fancy machine by using your regular foot, because it's going to cover all of the feed dogs, and then doing just moving your needle position over to the 1/4 inch. And then you're just using the edge of your presser foot as your guide. Okay. Let's see, just scrolling. Hey, Kris Spencer, good to see you. Let's see. Betty says, that is how I sew with a leader in my machine. Also uses her single hole plate, and it has saved her a lot of times. Yeah, absolutely. So using the leader can be extremely helpful. Okay. Any tips for sewing 2-inch squares? Nancy is asking. Well, the same idea, Nancy, with all of these things. It doesn't necessarily have to be a corner point. The corner points is where we see most of the problems with fabric getting pulled in there. But if your machine is giving you trouble with pulling it in, then these are the tips to also try. You could certainly do that. Also, with smaller squares, you want to shorten your stitch length, so that will help as well. Okay. Do you have a walking foot on my machine? I do not. Nope, that was just a regular 1/4 inch foot, Laurel. Yep, Janine says she uses a scrap of fabric at first. Yep, there you go. It's your leader cloth. Okay, and Sharon says she always uses a starter from scrap fabric. Good deal. Interesting. Alicia starts in the middle and goes out to each end. You can definitely do that. I would think, though, Alicia, that may it's not going to save you a ton of time, but certainly if it works for you to do it that way, you could most definitely do that. What you're saying also reminds me, and we've talked a little bit about this before, but it's like if you're ever marking triangles or half square triangles or whatever. Another little tip for you, it has nothing to do with sewing them, but with marking them. And what you said reminds me of this, is you put your marking ruler on there first, and I would certainly go from the center on out and then the center on out on drawing, because sometimes what happens is when we start at the top and we draw it, then it gets a little, a little ski-wampus, right? So, yeah, but I've never sewn it that way unless I should say never, unless I've got like a really difficult block that I'm trying to put together and I'm trying to match it up just so, then I would certainly, heed that advice for sure, and start in the middle and go out and then turn it around. You shouldn't really have to do it with triangles like this. If you follow those other tips, you might be in better luck. But again, if you've tried those other things and this is what's working for you, then I think that's awesome, right? Okay. Someone also said to use the plug. Use the plug. Are you talking? Maybe you're referring to the start stop button. That could certainly help, because the start stop button is going to give you even pressure. Instead of when you're using your foot pedals, sometimes we're like, and that might cause a problem as well. So anyway, just running through questions real quick. Yeah, Debbie loves her 1/4 inch foot. It has an edge that helps guide the fabric. Absolutely. There are some great 1/4 edge feet on the market that can definitely help you with that. Okay, Vanessa says, I actually sew a light and dark leader square together. One day I'll make a leader quilt. Hey, that's a great idea. You might as well do 2 things at once, right? If you're going to be starting on something like that, then make something while you're at it, and it's a twofer, right? Okay. Oh, Alicia, you're awesome. She's like, not now. I will clip ends from now on. You bet. You are welcome, my friend. Okay. Yes, exactly. There you go. Megan said if you cut scraps into 2.5 inch squares, you can use them as leaders and have them as a stack of leaders that can be sewn together to make a 4-patch. I love that. So if you really want to get the most out of your sewing and not waste fabric or anything like that, then that would be perfect. Carla says, I learned that a scrap of thread was called a spider. Yeah. Have you ever had a scrap of thread in your bed because, it came off from when you were sewing in your PJs, right? And then, and you thought it was a spider? Hopefully it's just that, and maybe it's not really a spider, and you go, oh, it's just a scrap of thread. Ah! No, that wouldn't be good either. There you go. Yeah, triangle paper is always a great thing as well. Yeah. Yeah, you could definitely use the purple thing. In fact, any of you looking for the purple thing, we're going to be selling it on Wednesday night at Comments Sold. The purple thing is a great little stiletto. The only thing that why I love this more than the purple thing on some projects, purple thing works great on a lot of projects. We use it all the time. I'm going to be talking to you about it on Wednesday. But the purple thing is plastic, and so sometimes it has a little bit of a tendency to slide, where this definitely is like, this is like a weapon, which is dangerous, I know. But it definitely, helps pick it up and pull it over, where the purple thing doesn't do that. But I love them both. Different tools for different jobs, right? So, oh, Linda, I'm glad you said that. She said, I thought it was me not handling those corners right when I sew them. But the good news, Linda, is that it's okay. It's totally fine. It happens to all of us. So don't ever worry or think it's your own you know, what that you're doing something wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just, this is you know, these are the things that we all experience as piecers and as quilters, and being able to kind of navigate through different tips, try these things out. Maybe one thing's going to work out really well for you, while another thing I said, you're like, no, that does not work for me, you know. So try out these different tips, and try out the things that other people have experienced and what they're commenting in here. It's awesome, right? It's, that's why we share these things, is because we've all been through those things before. So